Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Nature Folklore Sessions, 24th of July, 2022. Well, thank you for joining me. And where am I? I should be. There we are. I'm back. I'm there. Sorry. As usual, like last week, I've got everything was wonderful, and I'm going through tech issues the moment I'm starting up. So let me get that sorted. That's why I was a few seconds late for you. So sorry about that. But anyway, thank you very much for joining me for our weekly time of exploring nature-centered folklore. As usual, connecting this with your favorite sanctuary space and expressing any inspired visions from your sanctuary through your poetry, writing, art, craft, performance, and problem solving. Now, this is part one of our four-part Lunasadh series. It's Bilberry Sunday, which you saw the banner earlier instead of me. And also I'm going to be covering a bit with Garlands because it's Garland Sunday next week as well. And today the guests, we've got two lovely guests. We've got Penny Stevenson. Oh, here's a there you go. There's a bit of a Garland Sunday picture for you. But we've got Penny Stevenson coming up, and she's actually on the harp on when she's coming up, as well as a poem. And so she's put both of those together for us. And Linda Rosewood, she's in the green room there, living in Donegal, and author of the After Santa Cruz blog, and got a lovely blog post from that she's going to share with us on blueberries. And these nature folklore sessions and videos and tree and water sanctuary support, as usual, supported by that link there. That's the Patreon link there. And it's highly appreciate the support you do give through that. And some subscribers are watching us every week, or they join us and comment later. So thank you all for your continued support, because I wouldn't be able to fund putting this show together with you like I do today. I'm still struggling to cover the weekly and annual expenses. So if you can help and you're not subscribing, that's the link there. And that does go through PayPal. And some people don't like the PayPal. And if you don't like the PayPal, then you can go through these people. If I can... I've lost the thing. I should have it. There you go. Now, I've knocked it off. That's not very good, is it? It's the Buy Me a Coffee. Go to Buy Me a Coffee, look for Woodland Bard, and that's silly for me to throw that link off. Very important. So that's my wages this week disappeared, but you can use your regular card with that. So that's buymeacoffee.com, and it's / and it is Woodland Bard. No, it's Nature Folklore, not Woodland Bard. Nature Folklore. So buymeacoffee.com, Nature Folklore. Anyway, anything for $1, a pound, or euro all helps out. Right, let's see. I know Sherry's here. We're going to see what other early birds we've got here. Sherry, she hasn't forgiven me for the 1 week that we had off. Good morning, Sherry. There you go. And Terry Slack Hardwick is here. Good morning, John, from steamy rural Maryland. We've actually got some rain in Ireland, surprisingly enough. I haven't seen much of that for a while. Yesterday was a little showery, a bit more today, but thank goodness for that, because the watering was getting a little bit tedious. So thank you for those who are joining. Fabulous to have you with us. Anyway, let's get started. I didn't have time to include this. This is something I didn't have time to include last Sunday. It's actually way off from the... now let me get comments are flying back again. And this was, it's not to do with blueberries, but it's something coming up that I'm pretty excited about. I'm looking forward to a talk. It's actually happening on Tuesday, 16th of August at 8 p.m. Irish and UK time. And the title is Sacred Waters. Do I have something here? I might have something. Yeah. Title Sacred Waters, Healing Holy Wells and Folk Science. And it's put together by this lovely woman, Dr. Celeste Ray. And it's hosted by Dr. Amy Hale of the Victor Wind or Wind Museum, and the Last Tuesday Society. And that's how they're listed. Now, I'd like to spend a few minutes with you sharing a lovely synopsis, using their synopsis mainly. Sorry, I didn't have time to put pictures together to support this, but it's pretty understandable, and you'll understand it's a subject we're very passionate about on Nature Folklore. So I've retranslated some of the hyper-scientific and academic words that were thrown into the synopsis to hopefully make this a little more understandable. Now, I've added some of my own words too, due to its relationship that I feel this has to the topics we cover in Nature Folklore. So here we go. Our blue planet is a watery world, yet only 1% of Earth's most abundant molecule, being water, is both accessible and fresh. And it's supplying life's most basic daily need, our freshwater sources. And these freshwater sources were more likely to be our earliest sacred sites, and the first that were protected and contested for, too. And that's certainly true from folklore I've heard from Carrickeel in County Sligo, that we live nearby for a while. It's the home of, it's disputed, but it's said to be the home of the earliest community farming settlement in Ireland, but it did have a share of tribal conflicts for water rights in the area before anyone managed to settle there, because that, no water, people can't live there. No faucets in those days. So, water, it's guarded with what was in ancient times, still is in a way, guarded by taboos, rites, and super mundane forces. Freshwater sources have also been considered as being thresholds to the other world. So I still believe that myself. And I often relate to the she nymphs and sprites in spring wells, and myself, especially on Nature Folklore. Now, internationally, holy wells are often sacred springs. They're not called holy wells. And a sacred well can be any natural source of fresh water that has attracted some kind of human focus for ritual practice, and also engagement with the ethereal, supernatural, and the realm of entities, because lakes and lochs, they contain the majority of the Earth's liquid surface, fresh water. So they're sometimes referred to as sacred and holy wells too. And dramatic stories, as we know, come from lakes and lochs as well. And also revered as highly spiritual as spring sources of rivers, ponds, swamps even. And these sacred water sources, springs and natural wells, are often associated with venerated stones, we know, with trees, and also healing flora as well. And the sacred water sources, they're severely underestimated as sites of biocultural diversity. Now, water sources were likely to be the first sites that humans held reverence, partly because of that biodiversity that's present. And some water sources were selected as sacred because across the generations, locals realized that the water from them seemed to alleviate or cure particular ailments, especially if the waters, once they're surfaced, are chelated with minerals like magnesium, iron, sodium chloride, and lithium. Now, these water sources were recognized for relief of aches, especially from our back, throat, head, and teeth. And these water sources are often near trees too, and the trees themselves can give benefits to the water. And what is well known is the pain-relieving quality of bark, such as willow trees, because willow does provide a source of aspirin. Now, Dr. Celeste Ray believes the existence of religions can be explained through folk science, and she believes that stewarding environmental resources and understanding healing was originally enshrined in religious practice, and the ritual would provide the wisdom so it wouldn't be forgotten amongst people, because when religion was about, people could not read what the scribes could write. So this was a way of bringing that wisdom. So that was the education at the time, and it's different to the education that we use and we know today, because we are enabled to do reading and writing, and later it was printed literature after the scribes. And religious traditions, once upon a time, probably taught and encouraged recognition of biodiversity too, as a language, and encouraged that conservation. It still deserves our best attention. So Dr. Ray's talk identifies patterns of pan-human idolatry. I'll translate that out. Human connection to water through the ages. Anyway, and our talk asks us how perceptions of sacredness of water can be employed even today to improve our committed connection to human relationships to the natural environment around us, especially to repair the growing water crisis that's certainly around us. Now, Dr. Celeste Ray, she's a professor of environmental arts and humanities and anthropology at the University of South in Sewanee, Tennessee. And she's author of, well, this is the most important. I won't go through it. This is the one she's going to be working from, The Origins of Ireland's Holy Wells. She's got a lot of other books, but a passion for sacred springs and holy wells began. She was an undergraduate for a few years in Galway during the 80s, and that's how that started up. And she furthered her research into water through Italy, Scotland, Cornwall, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Austria. I'm surprised she didn't get to Estonia. That is actually packed with amazing holy wells. I suppose she'll get there eventually. But she's doing a lot around Appalachia at the moment. Anyway, this online talk is called Sacred Waters, Healing Wells and Folk Science. It's by Dr. Celeste Ray. It's on through Zoom on Tuesday, August the 16th, between 8 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. Irish and UK time. I haven't got a link to post, but it's bookable through Eventbrite. I've got my tickets. It was £11 with charges. And I suppose look up Eventbrite and Dr. Celeste Ray and put Sacred Waters, put all that into a search. I'm sure you'll get to the link and you can book in as well. Now, before I get talking about bilberries, let's have our first guest on. It's Penny Stevenson. She's got a video that she made with one of her poems, and Penny downloaded the excellent Filmmaker Pro app. It's not the easiest video editing app to use, but within 2 days of using this, she came out with a lovely production. So let's have Penny Stevenson. Well, before I do that, let's see. We got a few people joined on before we go. Let's see if Penny's here. And we got Alan blowing up balloons. There we go. And Claire is in through the YouTube this time. Hello, John. Nice to see you. Lovely to have you too, Claire. And Sharon here, Sharon Nichol from the Cairngorms, Scotland. Right, lovely to with you. No doubt Penny will be watching this later. So let's get on and I'll seek where Penny's video is. It's called Bilberry Pie, by the way, and it's lovely. So here we go with Penny Stevenson and Bilberry Pie.
It's late July and time to pick the bilberry from the drying heath. Up Jacob's ladder we climb high, beneath the azure of the sky, where butterflies rise on warming air and martins soar on swept back wing. Here on the cliff edge we stop to pick, with nimble fingers ripened fruit. The berry-stained fingers, hands are closed like wounded warriors, the bull juice flows, staining our lips. We rest a while amongst the heather, watching beetles scuttle in the grass. We hear the lark peer into the bright to see if we can spot her flight, while round us grasshoppers' comfort sound of clicking wings rise from the ground. Time to gather a garland for Bridget, woven from ribwork, daisies at our feet, from eye-bright campion, cornflowers poppy, honeyed meadowsweet. With bindweed we wrap them round our wrists and baskets. Then down the cliff path we stroll, bearing the bounties of the field, pausing to drink at the village well the divine water's refreshing charge. we wear our garlands onto the altar, the goddess tree, her fruits to yield. Now our reward is the bilberry pie, the sweet and the sour of the passing of summer, wrapped in pastry, the flowering of wheat. The berry with goodness is full indeed of the goddess's love, and so are we.
Ah, lovely from Penny. I was sort of in another world there. Thanks very much for doing that and attempting that, as I say, which is pretty awkward. That beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So let me get on with the main subject, which is a big one today, Bilberry Sunday. I've got a lot more on the bilberries than I had last year. I would have liked to have put a lot more, but this is a subject that's really going to develop each year. Now, going deep into the ancient folklore of the berries that we may call bilberries or one of many other names, we can probably go back thousands of years due to the blueberries being a precious and highly nutritious fruit of summer. Generally grows on the hills and moors among the heather. In fact, I'll talk about it later. There's a name that's almost close to the heather. That's used more in the east of Ireland. And although the bilberries around where I live now, they're mainly in the woods. There we go, bilberry bush. And they grow where the acid-loving trees grow, such as willow, alder, dogwood, birch, beech, and pine. Where they are, you can get the bilberries as well. And the trees in the woodland, they've got to allow light. If I go back to that picture again, this only works in the woods if there's some light. And that's a lovely sort of, you can see the light can come down in that little area there. And that's why there's bilberries. So if there's light, there's going to be bilberries growing in the woods, and the shrubs can survive very well. And the reason that sitka spruce plantations have wiped out vast amounts of blueberry shrubs is purely because of blocking out the light. The conditions are compatible, but there's just no light. But for thousands of years, bilberry is available. They grow and they're available for picking during July and August. They were revered for their exceptional nutrition, always been known for that. And also to be compatible with human logic. I think I'll talk about bilberries through 3 different ages. And the first age, it's definitely not balanced out, just easier to present to you. The first stage is almost our entire complete human existence. And then the second age is post-industrial revolution from the mid-19th century onwards. And then the third is the somewhat Celtic revival that did start up also in the mid-19th century, but definitely escalated recently with the foraging revival that seems to have truly exploded in popularity during the past 15 years, when, of course, social media has been very popular, and that has highly influenced the whole revival of foraging and going out there for the bilberries, as I'll call them for now. But as I said, the picking time of bilberries is July and August, and some pickers will actually start at summer solstice. They'll go straight onto it in the summer solstice there. Now, there is a pseudo folklore that may have been around for about 100 years or so, and it says it's unlucky to pick bilberries before Bilberry Sunday. And they state that the Bilberry Sunday is actually the last Sunday in July. This year, that would be next Sunday. But seeing as bilberry picking has commenced at summer solstice for thousands of years, I think we can put that pseudo lore aside, as it seems that folklore variant has become mixed up with, that one about the Bilberry Sunday, don't pick before next Sunday. I think that has got mixed up with one I will talk about next Sunday, saying you don't start up the barley harvesting until next Sunday. But I'll talk about that next Sunday. Anyway, the other thing that falls apart is that depending which region of Ireland you live in, Bilberry Sundays were actually regarded as different Sundays depending on the region you lived in. And certainly, this is not exclusive to the last Sunday in July. In fact, some regions, they would chop and change. We'll have the second Sunday this year. And then a bunch of people would get together over a few ales. Let's make it the third. And so it keeps going. Anyway, these days in Ireland, most people now have that fixed idea that the last Sunday in July is now Bilberry Sunday. And that is the sort of official time to celebrate the bilberries. And it's also the same day for celebrating the traditions of Garlands and Garland Sunday. And they're now separated separately on the last Sunday of July. But surprisingly, the true traditions are very much tied together. And I'll partly get around to that a bit later. But the common question is, what's the difference? I get a lot of, especially at this time, a lot of USA visitors, and they're familiar with blueberries. So what's the difference between what I'm talking about here with bilberries and blueberries? Especially as Scotland and Ulster, they call these berries blaeberries. And at first glance, the bilberry does look similar to a blueberry, doesn't it? Let's see if I got something that talks about that. There we go. There's a lovely picture I missed out of old picture of garland making. But anyway, there you go. Could you tell if that's a blueberry or a bilberry? Anyway, the two berries, they're closely related. They share similar nutritional values, but the bilberry actually tops the blueberry in nutritional values. But the most noticeable difference is cut them up, and you'll find there's different flesh colors. So what have I got? I've got some pictures here. This is it. Cut up a blueberry like you have in the US, and they're popular. People grow a lot of them over here. I do. Carol Corey grew a lot of these, but that's what it looks like when you cut it on side. But you go off onto the hills or into the woods and pick the bilberries and cut them in half. This is what they look like. They're just the same, almost the same color inside, just that flesh color of the from blue to mauve to ruby red. So that's the difference. So in addition to their difference in color, bilberries are also more acidic. They're less sweet than the blueberries. So maybe taste-wise, they wouldn't be so popular, not today anyway. But bilberries contain several plant compounds that can help inflammation, improve heart health due to assisting lower blood pressure, and may help prevent or slow down diabetes, definitely help to control it through helping to reduce blood sugar levels. So surprisingly, being a fruit, it will say if a diabetic has a high blood sugar, don't reach for the fruit. But bilberries is one of the things that diabetic, make sure they are bilberries, not so much the blueberries, can help reduce the blood sugar levels. I think if you go for the blueberries, throw a few nuts in with them as well, just to make sure. And ongoing research is actually looking to bilberries, especially as a help for reducing the risk of cancer. But I don't know how far that's got. But there's been some recognition of them reducing free radicals. So sustaining eye health, that's probably the most well-known. Here you go. Sustaining eye health is very abundant in bilberry folklore. Apparently, the anthocyanins in bilberries are believed to help improve eye function for people with receding into glaucoma. Now, some studies suggest that bilberries may help with eye fatigue as well. And so does this list anything? No, just a banner to say improve your eyesight and your eyes. Anyway, the studies have suggested that bilberries help with eye fatigue, which leads to eye strain, headaches, shoulder tension, and even blurred and double vision. Now, this is regarded as sort of old wives' tales and folklore. But when I was a child, our blueberry picking, this was in the 50s where we did our bilberry picking. And this was to actually earn some extra cash because we sold our bilberries or blueberries. And now I'm getting mixed up with it too. We sold our bilberries to the local Morehouse jam factory. And the factory was actually there on the moors. And I should have a picture. There we go. Huntley, there we go. A Morehouse, there you go. Right out on the moors, very old picture. There you go. And there was a gate there that an agent would weigh up and give you pocket money for the pickings. And their jam there was actually exclusively sold to the RAF to aid with night vision. And many say RAF bilberries, the night vision story is a complete myth, but there it is. The factory was there. That was its purpose. Now, through recent years, maybe 50 years ago, to give bilberries an all-island identity, the berries are now called round island freegon, and anglicised the Fron are not bilberries. So you got the Freon, and probably because it's thought that bilberries is an English word, but actually the word bilberry or bulberry is of Norse oranges, origin. So the fricon or froken seems to have originated from Leinster, and there the name for the berries came about from the fact that the shrubs there on the hills, they grow amongst the heather. The names are quite similar. And a popular area for picking has always been the Wicklow Mountains. And as I say, this translates out as being a heather plant that produces berries. But bilberry shrubs also, wherever they are in the open, they're growing amongst heather anyway. And through Munster, there's absolutely a different name. That's South and Southwest Island. They're Horts there, which is actually spelled with Whorts, or perhaps more popular today as whortleberries or hurtleberries. But the word origin of Herts or whortleberries or hurtleberries, I don't know. It sounds very Saxon to me, but the word came over to them from the south, from Cornwall and Brittany. It came to South and Southwest Ireland, and they adopted it because there's certainly a lot of bilberries in Cornwall and Brittany too. But strangely, in Connaught, which is here, Northwest Ireland, the berries are for thousands of years probably, they were bilberries. They took on the Norse bilbid, which comes from the Norse Viking, maybe Danish name Bull. As they assume that Bull is describing the colour and maybe the taste. So Bull has suddenly become Bill, and just with the berry on the end. But Ulster's name is like the Scottish name, usually blueberry, with blue simply meaning dark blue. But the blueberries tend to be more from woodlands than from the heather moors. Now, around Derry and the Inishowen part of Donegal, the berries are actually more amongst the heather. So they're just simply called heather berries there. And at least that probably for a couple of 100 years. But both heather and bilberry plants, they love acidy, peaty conditions wherever they are. Now, to get the bilberry stories going, like many of the stories, I will start with the Goltree, the melancholy of the bilberry traditions. And this starts from, as I say, the industrial mid-19th century, and it lasted until the 60s. So let's see what you're saying for now. We could always get bilberry jam growing up in New England. I don't know if that's still true. I wonder if they do have bilberries in New England. It wouldn't surprise me. Maine looks as if it's a natural place for the bilberry. So if you got more knowledge on that, please tell me. And we've got Cathal on board. Cathal, I hope we're going to get some of your poems soon. I'll send you a message in the week. And Claire says, thanks, there you go, the mighty penny. And Sharon McNichol loved the penny as well, and so did Terry. And Alan is still blowing a balloon. Fantastic. Well done, Alan. And anyway, as I say, start from the 19th century. There was a rapid building of factories during the Industrial Revolution within England, especially across Lancashire and Yorkshire. It must have been quite phenomenal at the time. And it took away a lot of the natural heathery moors, the bilberry growing areas in England. But demand for bilberries for health and nutrition and medicine was actually grown then in England. And so the English traders, they looked to Ireland for a supply of fresh-baked bilberries. But it was very low-paid work for the pickers, considering the effort they got put into it. And as I say, I had a bit of experience of that on the Yorkshire moors myself, and later on in the Hebrides, where we got some, but not so much there, but they were pretty abundant on the Yorkshire moors. And the picking was mainly at the time, during the industrial time, was by young girls who often did it with their mothers. And what they did, they actually employed techniques that they used to milk cows, because that's what they would be doing a lot of as well. I didn't get a proper enamel bucket, but they would take an enamel bucket along, and they might take a galvanized churn, a churn like that. And they would have that between their legs. And they would have both hands pulling on the bilberry branches, just like the movement of milking from the udders. And that's the way they would fill that up as quick as they could. And normally the bilberry picking is very slow, about 8 ounces bilberries an hour by a good forager. But I think by their technique, it was certainly not perhaps the most sustainable way. They might have beaten that in order to get some money going. But there was one custom before the industrialization came along of picking just one berry and leaving 5. So there was caution when it was done more as a social and personal thing. That's what people looked at. And I doubt if the foragers even bother with that today. They're certainly not going to be wild and try and get the berries like milking a cow, I suppose. But there was more concern about sustainability before the industrial bilberry picking. Anyway, the industrial picking, as they always did in many areas, it took away any kind of sustainable thinking, and it became all about making the most money you could as soon as possible. Now, different regions in Ireland developed different traditions of industrial bilberry picking, and from region to region, county to county, there were different traditions. And here we are, is a picture I got of selling to the agent. There they are, they're bringing all the bilberries down. The agent's there is waiting with the baskets, and so they fill the baskets, get weighed, get paid. And that's how they made the money, by selling to the agents. But every region had a different type of place. They would meet the agents, different way they would do it. It's amazing the different procedures. And I hope in perhaps separate videos I might give to the subscribers if I can find time. It's such a vast subject, but I'd love to go around telling you the traditions around each part of the country, of how they actually did the industrial bilberry picking and go through the agents. It's quite something. Now, the Wicklow Mountains was perhaps the most active and abundant area for the commercial picking out of all of Ireland, mainly because it's quite close to the port of Dunleary, as it's called today. It was called Kingstown, and the boats would take the bilberries from Kingstown over to Wales and England and transport. But if anybody's been to the Wicklow Mountains, there's not all that many roads going through, and to get to the bilberries, it's a long way away from the road. So people transport, it was their feet. They walked to it, but sometimes they would have a donkey and panniers, but usually it was just walking a few miles over the fields. Yeah, a few miles, because that was faster than walking the roads. And often the prime bilberry picking spots were obviously the spots they were highest on the hills, on the mountains, and especially where there was ledges or there were kind of suspect sort of deep swallow holes. If you knew what you were doing, no one else was there. I know it's creating risk, but that's where you would get your most amount of bilberries, because you got the least competition from others. But today, bilberry picking seems like a romantic way to connect with nature and forage for wholesome food, and indeed it is. It's certainly connecting with nature. Even if you do it for leisure now, you're going to connect with lots of nature, like midges, flies, clegs, ticks. But the worst of all, and this does happen amongst the heather, every now and again you might disturb a wasp nest. Sorry, I don't have any pictures of wasp nests. That's scary. But one of the products bilberry pickers swore by to keep these bugs away from, you hear about skin so soft, and for preventing midges. Actually, the big thing amongst these pickers, and it's been around, I think, since the mid-19th century, and that's Vic, the vapor rub. And that brings back memories of a childhood friend that I went bilberry picking with, and his name actually was Victor. And often when we met other pickers, I would introduce him, or he'd introduce himself as being Victor, and the response was, "Hello, Vic, how's your chest?" Anyway, other fears of being on the hills, and have been in this one, and this might happen today. It's been stuck on the hills, boom, thunderstorms, and it's the fork lightning that comes down. That's very scary. So you got that risk as well. And also, it hasn't happened to me, but I've seen it happen to other people, especially when you're on those ledges and you're trying to avoid the swallow holes. You're so proud of all the bilberries that you picked, and you trip over, off they go down the swallow hole, and that's your wages gone, or just in a moment. But there was some joy from this. There was the picnic break, and it's funny. I started off talking about a talk coming up on the Holy Wells. And one of the real joys of being up there on the hills is the picnic break. And the picnic break would generally find itself, because of the access to water, is often on these hills. There would be a holy well, there would be a spring well, or even a little loch or a lake. And that's where people congregated to get the water for the tea, or just water to quench the thirst, or even water to get rid of the pains that's from the back breaking, maybe from mixing with the plants, maybe from grazes, that type of thing. But the picnic break, despite the hardship of industrialized bilberry picking, it seemed as if it made the whole day worthwhile, because it was a social crack. The food choices might have been meager, not much access to food, but who cares? Just bring what you got, share it. It was the crack. Everybody loved that. And now, of course, I'm drifting into the joyful side of blueberry picking. But before I share the fun and games of bilberry picking, let's go up to Donegal, because things were very different up in Donegal. They did not really have the extent of industrial picking like what I've been talking about. And we're going to have, in the background, we've got Linda Rosewood from Donegal. And she would like to share her blog post, which would be a fabulous thing to do, of her experience of being amongst the bilberries of Donegal. And it's beautiful, because it actually does reveal very much how the bilberry picking has been there. So finding the thrills and sharing the imagery of the bilberry revelry of Ulster, which Donegal is part of. Let's get Linda on board. There we go. And good afternoon again. We've got you. Fantastic. No, I've lost her again, haven't I? There we go. Fantastic. That's great. Yeah, it's beautiful reading the blog post, and you're offering to read it to us.
Sure.
And I'm hopefully share the pictures with it. So we're bringing Linda's blog post fully to life here. Oh, this is fantastic.
So I sort of started where you did. In these latitudes, the world around, the hot weeks at the end of July and early August hold traditions for berry picking and courting. It's when the grain crops are ripening, but not yet ready to harvest, and farming people can get a break. It's time for a party. In Ireland, the last Sunday of July was known as Bilberry Sunday, after a shrub with a tiny berry similar to the North American blueberry. In this part of Ireland, they use the Scots Gaelic name for it, blaeberry, and celebrate on the shore of Lughnasadh. Lughnasadh, or something like that, please do not ask me to pronounce Irish. Lughnasadh is the Anglicization of the Irish word for high lake. It has nothing to do with salinity. Lughnasadh and its mountain are not too far from where we live. This is what the mountain looks like from our neighborhood. It's that shield-shaped mountain in the center. I noticed it there on the horizon yesterday when we took a walk at the Ards Friary. Earlier that morning, I had tried to climb it. I first read about Bilberry Sunday traditions in a book called The Foot of the Hill, Tales from the Townlands of Lughnasadh Mountain by Jim Nesbitt. Published in 2021, I found it at the grocery store. And it is a treasure of local history, legends, and gossip. Everything you want in a local history book. So now I'm going to read from Jim's book. Bilberry Sunday. The last Sunday of July and the first Sunday of August once paid homage to an age-old custom when parties from the parishes of Kilmacrennan, Termon, Mava, and Doe would gather for picnics at Lughnasadh to celebrate Bilberry Sunday. Originally a pagan harvest festival dedicated to the Celtic god Lu, the day entailed a climb to the crest of the Lughnasadh mountain to pick and eat bilberries, which at that time grew in great bounties on its braes. Seen as a sign of Mother Earth's covenant with her children, quantities of fresh bilberries were strung on stalks of grass and taken home to those who were unable to scale the 1,500-foot peak. The Dairy Journal of August 1908 has this to say about a pleasant day on the roof of Kilmacrennan Parish. On Sunday last, hundreds of young men and women of the surrounding districts, after hearing Mass at the various chapels, hastened to ascend the lofty mountain. After the party reached the top, 3 ringing cheers were given, and the customary greetings in Irish were exchanged. On a fine natural platform of good native granite, songs and readings in the old mellifluous Gaelic tone were given, the ladies, as usual, taking a prominent part. The descent was then begun, and before separating, the entire party made the cliffs re-echo with the stirring strains of God Save Ireland. For most participants, however, the main attraction was the evening's entertainment, when multitudes amassed on the banks, as bonfires blazed and piping flutes and fiddles played. Courting couples were very much in evidence, with gentlemen keen to impress the ladies by taking part in uproarious sporting contests and high-spirited carousing. Many Bilberry marriages were arranged on this grand social celebration. Others simply came for the purpose of making inquiries regarding lost cattle or stray sheep. And then Jim wrote a little poem for us. On summer Sunday evenings up to this hill we go, and lads and lassies gather there from the vales below. And on the crags we'd sit and sing some fine old Irish lays, or dance until the moon rose about Lughnasadh braes. Now, then I also wanted to include a place which is at the north end of Lughnasadh called the Dancing Knoll. And this is what Jim writes about the Dancing Knoll. Open-air reels and jigs took place on the liveliest manner on a grassy hillock known as Ardnansa, or the Dancing Knoll, which overlooked the rotund crater of Loch Reelan. For reasons of Irish irony, this ring-shaped lake reveled in the nickname the Devil's Punch Bowl, a stock joke of that time being plumb full to the brim with nothing but the purest water. Sadly, the tradition no longer survives. Fashions flourish and then fade, and with the advent of the First World War, followed by revolt and unrest of the 1920s, the festival dwindled, and soon Bilberry Sunday had become just another wistful memory. Inspired by Jim's stories, yesterday I decided to walk up Lughnasadh myself. The blaeberries no longer grow on the mountain, made extinct by sheep, but the heather was beautiful, and I saw a pretty bog moth near the stile. The internet says the path up the mountain is good, but someone has driven an ATV up it, and it's now eroded and slippery with scree. I was forced off the path too many times, and it seemed like I was damaging the delicate heather and moss even further. So before heading back down, I took this photo of the lake and 500 years of peat accumulation. As I sat there appreciating nature and hating people, I remembered the stone row on the other side of the lake. Stone rows are said to date to the Bronze Age, 3,000 years ago, similar to stone circles. If I couldn't walk to the peak, I would console myself with giving the stone row a visit. Like other rows and circles I visited, it's not visible from below. They set these stones on a small level place just down from the nearest hilltop. The berries are gone, the crowds and picnics are gone, but I did find this little friend. And then, of course, I had to remember the Blueberry Hill song.
I tried to get I wanted to put a recording up, but there's so many copyrights on it. I would be shut down if I put it up. So sorry, I couldn't finish off with that.
Yeah, but I think, I don't think we need to sing it, but I just loved how it seems to be a universal custom to be courting in the middle of summer at the same time that you're picking berries. That's just a beautiful, happy thing to be doing.
It is.
Yeah.
Did you actually get some berries from anywhere? Because that was surprising. Just to
I did. There's no berries up there anymore. It's
because
they let sheep run over everything. So pretty much
because certainly in most blueberry areas you do get sheep.
Oh, okay.
But I suppose if there is the trampling, maybe the burning of the heather, if they do that, that probably might have an effect. I don't know. But that's
so maybe
a real
I shouldn't
shame.
blame sheep. I apologize to the sheep.
No, but I'm wondering if a population of sheep would make a difference. So you haven't been able to get the bilberries from your area yet?
No.
I have a feeling Inishowen may well be lucky for it still. Otherwise, I think Eastern Donegal, you probably have more success. Definitely up on the in Tyrone, the Sperrins. The Sperrins, but I bet that's packed now. That's probably a very tourist thing. But I think it's guaranteed. I know when I've been to the Sperrins, I see. I've not been there bilberry time, but I've seen the bilberry bushes in quite a bit of abundance. I couldn't think of anywhere else whether there is anything. Glencolmcille area, I don't know.
Okay. I'll look for
Oh, yeah, thinking of that road. I bet there's some spots thinking of that road going from Ardra to Carrick, a beautiful road. I bet there's hidden places there with lots of them. So I hope you might find success finding the bilberries. But thanks for sharing that, because I'm certainly going into some of that you were saying, but it shows the playful time, which really seemed to never go away from that whole Ulster, including Donegal area, because like you, there just wasn't enough berries to get a load, make some money make it worthwhile for the agents to come along and send it over the boat to England. If there was any, it'd be sold to the local hotel to make custard and blueberry pies. You might get a bit of money with that, but that was it. But thanks very much. Any time to share the blog. Sorry, I haven't got the address of it.
I put it up on my.
Yeah, do. Thanks very much, and we'll be with you again. Thanks, Linda. Thanks, Linda Rose. I love that when we share one of her blog posts. It's fantastic. Let's see what comments you're saying before we get on to the naughty bits of the bilberry picking, as I might say. Just lovely to see you, Linda. Thanks for the stories and photos. And I'm getting a bit parched here. And Terry Slack, I'm saying thank you also to Linda. That great as well. Thank you very much for that. How are we doing here? Not too bad at all. Great. Right, let's get to the fun bit, the Goldtree bit. I mean the jauntry. This is it, the jauntry of bilberry picking, the happy part, the joyful part, because I talked about the pickers' picnic and gathering around the natural spring well for the access to the water. That was fun. But despite the hardships of industrial bilberry picking, the children thought it was still a good crack. They thought it was great because school was very severe back then. And far as they were concerned, being out with their parents, helping out with the bilberry picking, that was just great fun. Much better than being at school in those older times. But the irony of that is a lot of the bilberry picking earnings by the family was actually to be used to buy shoes for the children to wear at school for the next year. So anyway, all right. So get to work and pay for your heel or something. But going back to ancient times, it could well be that blueberry picking was very much the Lunasadh celebration. It probably was very much the Lunasadh celebration well before cereals came to the area from the immigrants that brought the cereals. Of course, Lunasadh, it was a celebration of the first harvest of cereals. But the bilberries were probably very much the symbolism of Lunasadh, the most ancient of them all. And as I often say in Nature Folklore, a lot of folklore traditions we are now celebrating in abundance have been reborn from fragments of known ancient traditions and brought together with a more modern interpretation that perhaps suits our times a lot more, and especially during these last 15 years of social media that has brought people together to explore these things and explore new interpretations. which drives the historic academics absolutely crazy, but never mind. Some of the traditions did come alive before the internet during the sort of guru and cult gatherings of the 70s and 80s. So part of their sort of professionalism was the insight into these old traditions, that they were the chosen few for that type of nonsense that went on. But the huge revival time, really, it still goes back to the 19th century, the Celtic Romance time. That was parallel to the Industrial Revolution that was kicking in. Now, before the Industrial Revolution, slowly also reviving during the 50s and through the 60s, was what we know as Bilberry Sunday. And that's Bilberry Sunday is very much what we know as the bilberry picking event of today. And it was matchmaking time as well. Well, it's not exactly a matchmaking photograph. Maybe he's dreaming of something like that. How I got that picture anyway. But parents may have sent their daughters and sons up to the hills. And the idea, they're up to the hills, and as far as the parents are supposedly concerned, they're there to pick bilberries. But it became a time when young boys and girls met up, and bilberry picking became quite a huge wooing and courting event amongst them. But that was the fun side of the bilberry picking, and that would lead on eventually to the bilberry picking Sunday dances. And the girls, they would bring along, they would be wooing with a boy, and they'd be coupling up, and then they go home, and the girls would bake their bilberry pies and tarts from what they had picked and gathered during the day. And then they were back at the dance to meet with the boy, and they would present the bilberry pie that they've just made. And they would be shared out. This pie would have actually been made with the blueberry pickings that the boy had made as well. It's not just up to the girls. Otherwise, if the boys' portion wasn't there, it might not be enough for a pie. But some girls, this is lovely, they made a quiche. They actually made a quiche with eggs and bilberries. It made the bilberries go a bit further, and it's actually very tasty. I actually prefer that to the pie myself. Now, before Bilberry Sunday evolved into a bit of dance and ceilidh party crack, there were more intimate traditions, and I'm going to talk about them a bit shortly. But bilberry or blaeberry picking in Ulster, as Linda was sharing with us, it's worth a bit of a separate consideration, as generally Ulster didn't seem to have the bilberry picking yields that the rest of Ireland had. And even as Linda was saying about around where she lives, where's the bilberries gone? Where's the blaeberries gone? Hasn't quite happened. So the bilberry picking never really got industrial there. So they never really experienced the hard labor and the essential, well, they did have essential income, but they looked to it in fishing more, I think. So they didn't have, say, the same experiences like the people in Wicklow and Meath and Wexford had, those sort of places, and Cork. But so in the Ulster and including Donegal, bilberry picking was mainly social. And the Sperry Mountains, and I was talking to Linda, that there's still plenty of bilberry bushes up there in County Tyrone. Beautiful place. If you go up there, the Bigmore Circles are a big, wonderful place to have wandered to see. And I'm going to talk more about Bigmore next Sunday. But the Sperry Mountains was probably the most popular gathering place for social bilberry Sunday gatherings, where they gathered at Bigmore. I'm not sure. It would be appropriate, actually, if they did, but I haven't heard of that there. The places where they did gather, I forget what it's called. I forget that. I'll think about it next week. But there's some hills further along from Bigmore. There's a little town. I can't think of the name of it. I know Claire played a gig there, and it needed a microphone cable, and I hadn't brought the cables, or a cable was broken. And I had noticed coming through, there was a shop that sold Coca-Cola, sweets, groceries, loads of bread, and it had a fiddle and accordion in the window. And I just as out of chance, I thought, I wonder if they've got any microphone cables. And the man led me to his garden shed, and it was full of musical gear. Anyway, I'm going off the subject, but the places where they met up for the Bilberries was just above the name of that village, which I can't remember. It begins with G. Anyway, I'm going through a diversion too much. But the last Sunday of July, that became the most popular day for the social bilberry picking. And Ulster really, I think, got the ball rolling again for a revival of the new interpretation of Lunasadh, to be symbolized by the berries and eventually the garlands. And through the bilberry picking, the Celtic romance revival that started off in the 19th century, then came through this revival, probably, I'm sort of losing track of when, maybe 30s in Ulster, it got going, possibly 20s, but it really got popular amongst from the adults down anyway, the last Saturday. And it started off really as a kind of mating time. You might call for the time a sinful mating time, a time of revelry, especially during the 30s there. And Bilberry Sunday developed each year as the Lughnasadh harvest celebration. So it quickly got beyond just being a place for boys and girls to meet and to do their wooing, grab their berries, maybe share a pie later. The dances started up, like what Linda was saying. And that just grew because there'd be the drinking of mead, ale, probably wine. I'm not sure if the poteen was included in that, but more and more music would come along. There'd be dancing. More and more people would be coming along. There'd be poetry, jumping fires, and then the traders would arrive and they'd be hawking their wares. It became just like Glastonbury, especially on the Sperrins. So it became the earliest of the sort of multimedia and festivals, big thing. And this was all happening on the hills. And meanwhile, through the rest of Ireland, especially between the two world wars, the bilberry pickers, they were devoted to earning very needed money. And the last thing they could do was any revelry. So there was definitely a separation between Ulster and this. But so this carried on from the 30s, not so much through the Second World War years, but it did revive in the 50s and early into the 60s too. But meanwhile, as there was a growing choice of better income opportunities that started up down the East Coast through Louth, through to Dublin, and even into Wicklow, maybe further, there was a transition from the annual hard labor of industrial picking to more of the courting and celebration, the fun side of the bilberry picking, just like what the Ulster people were enjoying. Why can't we enjoy that too? And they did. So there was no more thoughts of picking bilberries for export to England anymore. Bilberry picking suddenly became all for social crack again. And anyway, from the late 30s, especially during the 50s, England was importing less bilberries from Ireland. They were finding they could get a lot more bilberries from Poland than Ireland. So what happened over the Wicklow Mountains, the Freon picking was converted from being industrial to becoming a tourist attraction. I've got an old picture of this. There we go. Loads of people coming around somewhere in Wicklow. That's how it sort of evolved into a bit of a mating dance. And it's almost like as if the equivalent of Woodstock was there's a sort of line-to-line of horse and traps getting to the festival in the Wicklow Mountains. And Glendalough and Glenmalure hotels, they became legendary because they made the most delicious bilberry and custard pies. So a lot of people would come up and have fun with the bilberries. Maybe they could trade them in with the hotels, I don't know, to get a bit of pie. But so there we go. The people making money from the if they did go out on the hills to make money in Wicklow from the fruit picking, they found they were much better paid by bringing their berries to the hotels for the tourism hospitality than selling to the agents exporting the berries to England. So that kind of fizzled out. So the Bilberry Sunday reverie, it did last for about 50 years, but actually it faded away from the adults in the mid-30s. And then one of the it's not actually on the Wicklow Mountains. It's kind of the other side of Bortinglass is a place I'm thinking of. It's what would it be? West of Bortinglass, going towards Castle Dermot. It's actually probably closer towards Castle Dermot, which is actually in County Kildare. There's a hill there, Corballis Hill, and that was apparently the most popular. It was like the Sperrins one I was trying to tell you about. But that was the most popular social bilberry picking place. I haven't got photos of that for you now, unfortunately. Probably not worth it because almost that entire hill is covered in sitka spruce. So there'll be no bilberries up there anyway. But before the sitka plantations came along, when the people were meeting up, it was like a big, huge music festival. In fact, that hill, they had several stages set up on that hill, apparently. And each of the stages had different kinds of performances. And there were also competition stages as well. So it was enormous. So maybe this was what this picture was all about. Maybe it was after that festival. Were they wandering to Corballis Hill, I wonder. Anyway, I don't know where that's from, but it is Wicklow, Kildare anyway. But as can be anticipated, the church eventually had that festival closed down during the mid to late 30s. And why? Of course, because of the excess of debauchery. And I could talk about several other similar Bilberry Sunday celebration sites on the hills that people used to come together, especially in the northeast and southeast. But I better move on. But there was one wonderful place, and it's still a very active place. It's actually Carrickburn Hill, County Wexford. Let's see, it's east of New Cross. Yeah, I think it's east of New Cross. There's a New Cross to Wicklow Road. And if you travel along that road, it's on the left, going from the New Cross. And it's still a popular place of trails. And this at this place, at Carrickburn Hill in Wexford, let's give you, there we go. There's walkways. There's a map. A very popular place now for people to visit for going on walks. And they have these paths. A lot of people complaining about these paths because there's a lot of gravel going down, but it does help if people have got strollers and wheelchairs. So it gives them a bit of access. Notice there's the real excellent trees to support a few bilberry bushes around, and I gather I wouldn't be surprised. And if you get to the top of there, that's what you're looking down at, and you are looking down at what looks like plantation trees of sorts. There's some pine there. Anyway, that's looking down from Carrickburn Hill, which is in County Wexford. Anyway, with that Carrickburn Hill and all of them, it was all about boys and girls, freedom picking, and the Carrickburn definitely had stories of the girls returning home for the pie baking after the fun of picking the berries with this boy that they may have met at another time. But they had to go home not only for the pie baking, but to milk the cows as well. So after using the cow method for getting the bilberries for the pie, then they had to milk the cows, the real cows. But after all that was done, they would go back up the hill during the evening and share that baking, continue their wooing, their dancing, maybe mating, possibly. And then, of course, the church closed that one down during the early 30s in Wexford. So that was the end of that. But the youngsters, the adults, listened to the church. But even after the church had tried closing these down, teenagers and boys and girls younger, they did keep the bilberry meetups going and retaining much of the earliest tradition in a very covert way, of course. And they kept going through the 50s and the 60s, especially in Ulster. But it started fizzling out through the late 60s, especially what was lingering at the start of the 70s because of the Troubles. That's what put it out, possibly because they go up the hills, there were paramilitary soldiers there training. This was probably so, unfortunately, in the Wicklow Mountains as well. Now, there's so much to tell you about Bilberry traditions, and I'm going to add to this, hopefully, each year. But I'd love to make small videos of each little of the things I've been talking about, because Bilberries are fascinating and how people met over them, how they earn their money. So I'll try and find some production time if I can for that. So let's have a look. There we go. There we go. What was that? It looks like a Woodstock festival in suits. That's right. A lot of blueberry picking would have been done in suits because they had to do some wooing after all, and then they had the dances and being able to ask for dances as well. Michigan blueberries are fabulous. As I was saying, Kate, earlier in this video, I give the extreme differences between the bilberries and the blueberries. There is quite a few differences. I give you pictures at the beginning, how the coloring is very different inside. The bilberries are more acidic, and the concentration, the nutritional concentration is actually a lot greater. But the blueberries are much more palatable for most people because of them being sweet. And you will find there's a lot of commercial blueberry growing over here. In fact, it's easier to find blueberries and bilberries over here, and it's a longer season as well. The bilberries are wild, and they're only around from really the summer solstice till mid to the end of August. So I explained all that at the beginning. It's a very different species to the blueberries, but it doesn't dismiss the blueberries because they are valuable in their own right. So I hope I have shown the difference. The bilberries is very much different to the blueberries. Similar genetic relationship, but as far as nutritional makeup, very different. And of course, the traditions will be quite different as well. I suppose in one way, and blueberry and bilberry over here, as I say, blueberry is much more popular over here than the bilberry is because of sweetness, palatable, greater sized berries, easier to get. And I know when I lived in the USA, you go into a shop or a bar, and there was only two taps. One was Guinness, one was Harp. What happened when I came back, you went in, the Guinness tap was sometimes there, but you had the Bud tap and the Heineken tap. So, and somehow the Budweiser and Heineken have become more palatable than the Guinness and the Harp. And I think there's a bit of a similar way of describing the blueberry and bilberry transition and preferences. So and then in Maine, fields of blueberries. And that's what I'd like to know, Sherry. Are they actually blueberries, as we know? But you say they turn scarlet. Or do you actually have a species of bilberry that's there in Maine? As I say, you can tell the difference. Cut the blueberry. If they're green in the middle, then they're blueberries. If they're the same color as the skin on the inside, or maybe a little mauvey, then you know you've got bilberries. Although some have genetically changed that. Some have genetically changed blueberries to look like bilberries. And there's even a plant place in County Cork here who sells them. I tried them at Carracroy. They didn't grow so well. So often what happens, I suppose, with a hybrid. So there's a lot of changing to try and adulterate them, because to try and get the bilberry feel with the blueberry taste. Anyway, before I close this session, Garlands was in the title. I better talk a little about Garlands. As I say, close to wherever there's bilberries, there's always wildflowers close by. Let's get some. Let's see if I can get back to my pictures. So, yeah, something like this. Abundant flowers that you can get very close to the bilberries. And the boys would weave garlands from these, and they would hand them over to the girls. Or even give them a bunch and say, make your own. But then, of course, the garlands and the weaving here, it was totally distracting from the whole object of being there to pick the bilberries, of course. Picking more bilberries, especially for that pie, the worm pie later on. The boys, they might have made garlands from grass and woven berries and stalks into them. That's been known. I did have a photo somewhere of that, but that's gone. But after the lads had gifted the garland to the girls, they had an eye for, and the girls accepted. There you go. There's a bit of that going on here. Then I think you can imagine what followed, and that would lead us to the sauntery, the dreaming of the bilberry picking. So, right. Now, let's see, Terry Slack has discussing the differences of the bilberries you got over there, thinking of scarlet barons, goodness me. Anyway, for garland making, daisies seem to be very much the thing. Let's get back to this, and I've lost my photos. There we go, daisies. There we go, daisy garland there. Very much the most popular and the easiest to access. Buttercups as well made great garlands. I'll put the buttercups in with the daisies as well. And sometimes garlands were made from ivy and honeysuckle as well. I think I've got an example here. There we go. There's a bit of ivy in that one, at least, and maybe some honeysuckle as well. And then flowers would be inserted into these, extra flowers. And by tradition, the garlands were made and worn by women, girls who'd not yet had children yet. That just like it was the traditions around Imbolc that's forgotten. A lot of that is forgotten. The crosses used to just be made by women, and the Bridget dolls were only made by girls and women who hadn't had children yet. And am I right to believe that the many uses to make these garlands as children, well, there's not really, the children perhaps don't fully understand what the garlands are about. And when I was young, as a child at first, I was making garlands because it seemed to be the thing to do this time of year. So I wasn't fully understanding what the whole point is. And I think I was a bit like this lad. I didn't realize I was making a garland to woo a little girl somewhere. I'm not sure if I put it on my head and danced around to try and get attention. Anyway, I think a little bit of misunderstanding might have happened. But many girls were also doing this as well. But there were some boys that made garlands and gifted them to girls, even if they didn't really understand what they were doing. And I think that's exactly what I did. I would make the garland and probably put it on my head and sort of act the maggot. But then there'd be a girl, I'd say, oh, yeah, it would look nice on her. And I think I handed it over. I think as young ones, that's what a lot of us did then anyway. But as you will now, or at least heard on Nature Folklore, the tradition of mating time around either Beltner, early May. I want to change my, for the last sort of lap here, I'm going to change my virtual background to something else for a moment. What we got? Yeah, so let's just have, since we're talking about garlands, let's have these young'uns on for the last lap of doing this. So the traditional mating time of Beltner, early May. And another tradition I mentioned is women seeking for visions of their future mate at Holywell around their Imbolc, or more popular later on was on May Day Eve, using the Gregorian time that we use now, the what would have been, what's April the 30th. So those who mated in early May, who did get down to the mating stuff, Beltner, by Lunasadh, they'll be starting to get aware of their pregnancy. Now I'm going to leave more about Garlands and Garland Sunday until next Sunday, instead of what happens after discovering the pregnancy. And I will talk about next Sunday. I'll talk about how the garland tradition moved from bilberry picking sites into the first harvest hill climbing traditions, and even onto how the church influenced Garland Sunday traditions of keening in churchyards and by holy wells. Anyway, let's any more comments from you about that on garlands, on bilberries, and that Shaggy Dog discussion of the difference between blueberries and bilberries? No more comments from you. Just fire any questions that you can. And I thank you for your support. I'm going to tell you what's coming up in the next few weeks, because from right now until Imbolc, it's just going to be bang, 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 non-stop traditions, exciting times. So thank you for supporting the Nature Folklore show. There again, $1, pound, or euro a month all helps to keep this thing going. And if you don't like going through the PayPal, you can ask me about buying me a coffee, but it's buymeacoffee.com/Nature Folklore, and you can just use any card. It all helps keep the show going just a little bit. Thanks you very much. Now, what we got coming up? 31st of July. That's next Sunday, isn't it? And though this is the actual day of Bilberry and Garland's traditions, I'm going to be covering a lot of the first harvest of Lunasadh traditions. Let me see. I've got a nice, there we go, cereal harvest, first harvest, because it said, don't you dare do your first harvest until the 31st. And that's going to be next Sunday, isn't it? But the actual point of Lunasadh here in Ireland that's the Gregorian time. If we're talking about the 31st of July, and but the real time is using the sidereal time, using the in relation of the heavens to the earth time. That's been around since the Babylonian times and Persians way before then. It's going to be 1:36 p.m. the following Sunday on the 7th of August. So between the 31st of July and 7th of August, there's going to be all kinds of gatherings around Ireland. There's Bird Vintage Week and Arts Festival. That's on from the 29th of July to 6th of August. Tobacurry Old Fair, which is beautiful one, from the 6th to 10th of August. There's Tobacurry, which is a great fun place. That's a really lovely event to go. You really see a lot of traditional people there. There's the Kilkenny Arts Festival. That's kicks off on the 4th of August. But there's lots of smaller ones that are operating. They're not actually, they've started operating. A lot of them haven't picked up after the, they just haven't picked up after. I'm looking for a picture actually. I'm muttering around, hasn't come up. They just haven't picked up since the pandemic. And I'm sorry about this. I'm looking for a picture I want to show you. It's related to another event coming up, and I'm wondering why it hasn't come up yet. Yeah, why hasn't it come up yet? I'm trying. It must be here. It's slow. It's coming up. Excuse me for being hesitating. It's related. Remember when we had all? I keep calling her order. No, that's what I want to show. That's the one I want. I'm going to show you in a minute. Remember when we had Astrid on last week, who had the video of her going through the whole process of picking nettles and weaving them into balls. There you are. There's some of her balls have been, they've actually been dyed. And she's going off to a traditional festival as well next weekend. And excuse me a minute while I try and find out where she's going. It's north of, it's in North Kerry. And I know it's, it's not going to let me get through. No, that's a shame. No continuity. No, it's a shame. I'll try and put it up later. I did want to, I should have written a note down on it. But Astrid, who was on last Sunday, there's a traditional gathering of traditional traders of very old skills are all coming together at a mill that's north of Listowel. It's on a road that's between Tarbert and Ballybunion Beach. So there's a little road. Following that, if you're directly north of Listowel, there's an old mill there that's having a wonderful festival next weekend. That's got all the traditional crafts as unique as what Astrid is doing with there. I'm going to try again. Astrid Adler. I keep calling it Astrid, don't I? Let's see if I've got something here. I got the article, but it's again Ballylongford. It's called Ballylongford Mill. If you're in the area, look in the Google Maps. Ballylongford Mill, way north of Listowel. It's on the Tarbert to Ballybunion. And it looks like an incredible festival if you can get to it. Anyway, better move on and get this talked about. We're going to have a new poem from Grace Wells on Lunasadh. That's going to happen next Sunday on the 31st. And then on the 7th of August and 14th of August, I'm looking forward to this. I love this one. It's going to be 2 Sundays sharing about Crom Cruach and Crom Dove. Amazing characters with legends and stories that spread many thousands of years away from Persian tradition right across the Silk Road, I suppose, definitely Eastern Europe and Ukraine and even Russia and through Poland and from the Balkans to the Baltic. It's an incredible story of folklore and mythology, and I'm going to spend 2 weeks over it. And it really is the backbone to how we have the harvest and do what we do, even though they say that the grain started from Turkey. It's a phenomenal story. And there's these characters, Crom Cruach and Crom Dove. Their folklore is quite a mystery. It's little known about, but it's phenomenal how it's the real backbone behind the Lunasadh celebration. It's the foundation of all our harvest folklore, really. And throughout much of Europe, let's see if I can get some pictures up again. There we go. We got, there's a symbolism of Crom Cruach rising out of the straw there. And then that's the Crom Dove, tends to be a bit like this character here. And then if you go to a cemetery that's on Boer Island, you got, some say that's what the 2 faces there is together is possibly the imagery of Crom Cruach and Crom Dove, because a lot of the Crom folklore is from that area as well. And then you'll find a lot of it is related to the Grange Circles down in Limerick. That big stone there is actually the Crom Dove stone. And I'll talk about that over these weeks as well. And then if you go up into Maxlack, that a lot of the story comes from, that man's going into a phenomenal area there. It's like a tree circle. And there's the stone structures there is quite something. And there's some of the stones there. And from there, it said people would be there to revere the Crom Dove stone that was in there. Totally stolen. It's in the Cavan Museum, I think. But there's a replica on a crossroads that's by that field. And that's the replica of the stone there. So I'll be talking all about that. That'll be on the 7th and 14th of August. And B. Smith's actually going to be back with us, and she'll be talking about Crom Cruach and Crom Sleck, Crom Cruach and Crom Dove on Mark Sleck on probably on the 14th, I think. And Tony Cookson may be with us with a story as well. So we'll then follow those 4 Sundays of Lunasadh. This was the first one. And there'll be 4 Sundays of harvesting. Actually, there will be 3 of them because I'm going to go off to a woodland festival on one of them. And then the exciting part is we have a marathon 8 Sundays on Sawan folklore. So thank you again to our guests, Penny Stevenson and Linda Rosewood. If you're watching the broadcast as an archive video, please comment here do return from time to time because I do answer the questions. Subscribe, you can, clicking below. Click the YouTube bell and you'll be reminded each Sunday of what's coming up. So let's see what you're saying. There we go. There we go. The basket of balls. You probably saw the video last week, and that's what ended after the spinning. That's what happened. Thank you so much, Penny and Linda from Sherry. Love the Garland history. As I say, Terry, I'll be going into that a lot next week. Because a lot of people relate the Garland and Garland Sunday to going up the hills, the Crowpatrick pilgrimage climb. That comes out of all that as well. But then I talked about the church influence, the keening. There's a Garland Sunday meetup that's happening around the Holy Well outside of Sligo. How can I forget the Tobernaut Well outside there? That is related to when the church changed it into a keening session. It's not keening session now. You just get a choir in. There was something else I wanted to bring up. The picture didn't come up. But certainly next Sunday, the cache, after bringing back their Garland Sunday, and I did have a poster of that somewhere, and that seems to have been vanished. Is this it? It might be. Let's see if this is it. If I can give you the poster, if you happen to be in cache, there you go. And no, that's wrong. No, wrong one. No, that's gone. So that's I must have lost that one. It's nice for you to know now, just in case you want to make a decision to be there next Sunday. Is the cache Garland Sunday? No, it's not there. It's going deep into my. Is it there? All right, we'll give it one more go. Ah, here it is. I think it is. Let's try this one. The cache, if you're in the area. That's what they do. Is that the new one? I'm not sure. No, that's an old one, isn't it? Is it? No, that's the 2000. I got the wrong one. You get the sense of it from that. They're doing the same thing again. It's not the current poster. But they have a dog show. They have a baby show. And I'll be explaining the origins of why there's a dog show and a baby show at Cache, and why they're actually celebrating this in a field, and they have the sports as well. And of course that brings in the whole thing of Luke, of the King Lu, and his declaring sports day. So I'll go all into that as well next Sunday as well. Lots of great things for you to look forward to that moves on from the Bilberries. But it all really started with the Bilberries. And Cliff Carr's come in. We're going to try and sneak in a Cliff Carr song either next Sunday or the Sunday after. He's been out and about. I don't know if he's been the Bilberry picking or not. So thank you very much, everyone. It's been wonderful presenting this to you. And I hope you will definitely enjoy a wonderful, safe week full of inspirations, enchantments, maybe a bit of bilberry picking, maybe a bit of wooing with your bilberry picking. So until next Sunday, play well. And I think it's more than enough for today, isn't it? Thank you very much for being with me. So bye-bye. Bye. That didn't do anything, did it? There we go.